Hey everyone! It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, I do apologize. I really enjoy making these Tales from Behind the DM Screens videos, and I was really enjoying doing them. It's just one of those things where life and work and kids and family and whatever, travel, who knows what, I fell out of the routine. And I'm sorry for that. I'm going to try to get back into it. I know that there is a small but very measurable and very, I don't know what the word I want to look for here is, you're very kind. Let's just say that. And your love for these videos does not go unnoticed. So thank you all for the bearing through the extended hiatus and for taking the time to watch this. Today, I have the classic Swords and Wizardry DM screen up in front of me. I'm probably going to ditch this at some point because I want to be able to show you some things. But that's where the Tales from Behind the DM screen is coming from today. So, the capturing comment, the title of the why Mega Dungeons suck. So recently, and if I can, I'll find the image of this and I'll put it up while I'm talking here real quickly. But I'll have to find it. I didn't save it. I should have. Recently in the D&D world or OSR world, a photo or a scan of somebody's old Mega Dungeon map appeared, and if you're looking at it right now, or if you find it, it was a mess. And there was lots of comments back and forth, like people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! I wanna like, you know, scan this and make it into a T-shirt. I wanna cake this and I wanna make my own adventure around it. And the thing is, as I said, it was a mess, and it reminded me of a lot of things. It reminded me mostly of the fact that when I made dungeons, and mind you, I've been playing D&D since I was 7 or 8 years old. I can't remember when my brother introduced me to it. But when I've been playing it now for over 4 decades. And when I started, and I was a player first, as most people are. And when I became a Dungeon Master, I played a lot of store-bought adventures. You know, obviously we all started on Keep in the Borderlands. I remember when I found Search of the Unknown in B1, I was super excited. I remember, Lost City B4 and the Palace of the Silver Princess B3, those, for whatever reason, for me, were like 2 of the best adventures that I had ever found. I think I loved B3 because of the story behind it. The fact that like it was this palace that like this horrible curse had happened, and the PCs, you know, were basically asked to come there to solve the problems. And I do remember my older brother being he must have been 16 or 17, and so then that means I was like 11. I still remember like him and his friends, and I was the dungeon master for them. And once again, we'll get to Mega Dungeons here. Just I got a point here. I love the fact that even he said, because like there's some opening scrawl that you have to speak, and part of it was something along the lines of like this ancient race of whoever like called upon you, these heroes, to come and save them. Well, they all just made first level heroes. They just had rolled up their stats, and they had their like 4 or 5 people that had made their characters. And I remember my brother just said, "Wow, these people are hard up if they're asking us to save them, you know, because they all had 0 XP and everything." And I remember thinking that was funny. And as a kid, I was like, "Oh, that does make a lot of sense, yeah." And I think that actually kind of ties into something that I'm going to be talking about, and that's of course a word that I use a lot, verisimilitude. Which is just the appearance of making things seem real, right? I mean, and we'll get back to that. we'll get back to that. This is going to be a kind of a longer rambling video, and maybe it's just because I haven't done one in a while, but I really like B3 for that. I also love the back thing where it showed this monster had like this person in a tentacle and was dragging him up to like kill him. And I remember they had like this battle axe in their hand. They were gonna like smash it. It was like just a scene that, even though it was just a still picture, it had so much action in it. I just loved that. If I could find that as a t-shirt, I would wear that as a t-shirt. I would have that as a poster. I just always loved that picture. Anyway, my whole point here is I'm getting to B4. So B4, the reason I really like that one is that they kind of had a story behind it, where like you were in this caravan and you got lost in a sandstorm. And I remember that was the first time I ever tried to make a map. Like, and I mean, it's lost. I mean, in my mind, I'm trying to remember it, but I remember I tried to make an overland map, like this is the world you lived in, and like there was this great desert. And I remember I drew this, like, you know, there's this road that supposedly, you know, like is in direction of like this town. I remember in the description in B4 they mentioned like you decide to head east. And so then I remember actually like having to, like, because I had made this diagonal like map kind of thing, like, so like the you know, so it isn't the classic north, south, west, east kind of thing, and that's backwards for you. But I remember I had to put my compass, so it was off kilter to show that east, because like it just had to be that way, right? I didn't have the mind at that time to just say, okay, I can just say they were heading northeast, right? No, I had to make sure that the diagonal, you know, was, anyway. Yeah, I just, why I'm remembering that right now, I have no idea. But my point is that well, you have no idea what my point is. B4 is a mega dungeon, and if you go back and they did Goodman Games did the fantastic reprint of it, and which was, you know, I own a copy, but I still have my original copy of it. But you can find it online if you want to look at the maps and stuff. It is it starts off small and it just grows and grows and grows until like there's 5 levels of this dungeon, and technically there are like, you know, 5 more levels, as like, you know, the pyramid becomes like another pyramid and then ends in the bottom, right? So but it has multiple levels, it has multiple things going on. It is a mega dungeon. And I remember as a kid, I just loved it. I loved the fact that there were all these cool places you could go. You know, B3, B4, and B5. I'm not going to get sidetracked on B5. The Horror on the Hill is, in my mind, one of the best adventures ever written as well. But I'm not going to get sidetracked. One of the things about the whole thing is that B4 really opened my eyes to like making my own dungeons and like making like big huge dungeons. And I can remember going to like Northern School Supply, which if for the one person who lived in, that might watch this at some point in your life, that lived in Fargo, North Dakota in the late 1970s, early 1980s, there was a place called Northern School Supply in downtown Fargo that my mother would take me to it, and it was better than a toy store. It was like one of those places where now you can go anywhere and you can find graph paper. But back in the day, it was tough to find. But you walk in Northern School Supply and they had graph paper of all kinds. They had hexagons of all kinds. They had markers of all kinds. I just remember whenever I needed something for D&D, my mother would take me to Northern School Supply, and I'd go in there. And plus they had books and all kinds of stuff. But I remember I loved that place. Anyway, I remember I asked her to take me someplace to get graph paper. We went to Northern School Supply. I got this giant ream of graph paper, and I remember I spent days and days and days and days just drawing dungeons, and then taking because at this point I believe I was playing basic set. I was almost positive I mean, I owned AD&D, but I hadn't moved on to it yet. I remember going through the monsters in the basic set and just putting monsters in every single room that I possibly could that I thought would be cool. And then, of course, because rolling dice is fun, then I would go on and I would roll for the treasure in each and every one of those rooms. And it would be like, and I would just get so excited. I was like, ooh, there's 6 gems in here. Or, oh, there's a magic item, and things like that. And I would get super excited about rolling randomly for those things for each one of those rooms. And I really enjoyed that. Now, and the thing is that when I had my friends over after school or on weekends or whatever to play, they loved it too, because it was just one more room of fighting after fighting after fighting, and that's all it was. I mean, we didn't care about resting, we didn't care about keeping track of your ammunition, we didn't keep track of food and water. For us, it was just rolling dice, and for me, killing players, and for them, killing monsters, and for them getting, like, just thousands and thousands of gold, which, ostensibly they thought they'd be spending it on something, but they just, as a kid, I mean, I remember when first time I ever played D&D with my son, there was a room that had, like, a golden bowl in it, and he took it, and he was just like, I'm keeping this golden bowl. It was made out of gold, and why? Because it was cool to have this golden bowl, and I remember, like, when he did that, and he was, 6 at the time, I remember thinking, because it's just cool. It's like the idea for my son was like, if I had a solid gold bowl in real life, how cool would that be? And so I think when we were kids and we were playing, when I was in like 4th and 5th grade and we were playing D&D all the time, it was like, oh, I have 17,000 gold pieces. Like the idea that you had that much gold or that much like diamonds or whatever was just cool. You didn't have this idea that I'm going to build a stronghold with it or anything like that. But anyway, again, I'm all over the place with this conversation, as I knew I would be. Thank you for sticking with me. So, what was the problem with that, though? I mean, the way I described it to you, it's like room after room of weird, different monsters, whatever. Okay, so, most Mega Dungeons, when we made them as kids, they had no premise, right? It was like, what would be a cool monster to have in this room, kind of. And there was even random tables you rolled. You rolled, and it's like, oh, this room has ghouls in it. Okay, cool. And you roll for the next one. Oh, this room has ogres in it. This room has hobgoblins. Why in these 3 rooms right next to each other have these 3 different types? Who cares? Roll for the treasure. Let's go. Let's have a cool combat already. And so, but as we progressed, we kind of like learned to. And to be fair, to be absolutely fair, there was a lot of published adventures that also didn't make any sense at all as to why certain creatures were in certain places. They did a better job, but there was a lot. I still remember like playing a Middle-earth role-playing game with my buddy David 1,000 years ago, and he just made me, because nobody else would play MERP, and so I made like 3 characters, and we did this adventure, and I remember there was this room that he made that had a bunch of treasure in the middle of the room, and it was guarded by this cave bear that was on a chain, and it was like, and the chain was like on a like put into the ground, so the cave bear couldn't get out of the room, and we would protect that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's just shoot arrows at it until it dies. And I remember he was so flabbergasted that I would do that. Like, that was cruel, right? And I was just like, yeah, well, and then the second time we shot it with an arrow, it broke its chain and just killed us all. Because, anyway, wow, I haven't thought about that in years. But anyway, the thing is that, like, we tended to, like, put things in, like, I can remember a store-bought adventure where, like, we went into a room, and there in the room there's these, like, 30-foot long giant scorpions in the room. And then all of us kind of sat there and thought, the doors are, this wide. How did this 30-foot long giant scorpion get in here? Did it move in here and then it grew up? Anyway, and then how was it eating? Anyway, so the point is that a lot of Mega Dungeons just don't make sense. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like them. The verisimilitude kind of goes out the door, especially in people. The process to create one and taking the time to create one that is you well thought out, and the thing is that even now when I run dungeons and stuff like that, I mean, I'll be completely honest, and this is for a video in the future. Like 90% of my sessions is all on the fly. And I know, and that's and the thing is that my players have no idea. But regardless, so when we create something, to take the time to create each and every room and put a certain kind of trap in it and put a certain kind of treasure in it and put a certain kind of monster in it, and that monster's got to match it. That's tough. It's not easy. Yeah, you can say there's a lot of undead in here, and you can ramp up skeletons, then zombies, and so on and so forth until you run into the vampire or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? And that's not so tough. But, and if it's a hobgoblin camp, it's like hobgoblins, and maybe they're wolves, and maybe a few carnivorous apes, and, just things like that, and then there are two ogre elites, things like that. You can make something like that makes sense. But that's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do, especially if you're just like having like some sort of weird Underdark thing where it could be anything, which actually kind of helps if you want to just make it anything. I'm making arguments as to how easy this would be, but I'm telling you the truth, it is tough to come up with a lots and lots of places and lots of things to go and fight and deal with that is going to seem real to your players, like it seems like feasible, and also, like, just makes sense. Like have some... Like, dungeon ecology was something that was in a lot of Dragon magazines back in the day that, like, professed that was something that was important. And I agree. I agree that dungeon ecology is an important thing. I do remember about 3 or 4 years ago, I asked my daughter to make a dungeon for my friends. And I gave her like a big giant pile of monster books, and she just created it. She drew out a map, and then each room she told me what kind of monsters in there, and then I ran it, and I knew what type of monster was going to be in the room. I would determine how many would be in that room, and I would determine the treasure, and I would determine how that room worked, right? But the thing is that it made no sense. Like, she was just finding cool monsters in the book, and the way I did it is that there was there was in my campaign, they had to breach the walls of chaos, as I called it, and to breach the walls of chaos, they had to go through the trials of wonder or something along those lines. And one of those things was they had to get through these successive basically these chambers of chaos, which was the reason why there was all these weird monsters everywhere. And to be fair, my players loved it. They loved it. They thought this was amazing. It was because instead of being grounded in reality and being because there's been this big push lately, and I'm totally on board with it a lot myself, of having gritty, realistic dungeons, make dungeons that, once again, the ecology of dungeons that make sense, that sort of thing. There's a lot of that. And I'm just as susceptible to trying to make that myself as anybody else. But it was, and I think my players enjoyed that, but they kind of enjoyed the fact that they were just basically, it's in this room we ran into clay golems being commanded by a weird quasit sorcerer, and then in the next room they went into, it was a Rakshasa and his tribe of gnolls or something like that. And it was just stuff like that just nothing conjoined, right? And so they were really enjoying that. But that doesn't work, right? You can't just throw weird stuff at people over and over again, and they're just going to get bored of it. And I guess maybe they wouldn't get bored of it. I would get tired of running that. I wouldn't have a good time running that. So that's one of the things I hate about Mega Dungeons, is that usually if they're made by if they're a homebrew, it's one, tough to make, two, or it's relatively easy to make, but they just don't make any sense. And they just, it's you find yourself saying, well, what's going on here? And to be fair, there are some things that you can buy, does anybody remember this? The World's Largest Dungeon. I played in this campaign. My buddy Jason tried to run this. This came up from AEG several years ago. This, in my opinion, was one of the worst dungeons I've ever had the displeasure of having to go through. I guess like the thing itself, as far as I'm trying to find, I got the map somewhere. It's over there. I apologize. I'm not going to go grab it, but this made no sense. This whole dungeon made no sense. It wasn't any fun. It was just like throwing ourselves against the wall. It seemed like the whole thing had no purpose whatsoever other than just to make sure that there was a billion rooms and there was weird monsters in every single one. Not fun. Not fun at all. So another thing about mega dungeons that I don't like is that, and this is once again the verisimilitude. So back in the day, when wandering monsters were like considered a thing, and I mean, and to be fair, I don't really know if there's a lot of 5e people that play 5e use wandering monsters or not. Back in the day, wandering monsters were important. Wandering monsters were ostensibly a random roll that the DM would roll like once every certain period of time, that would cause the players to have a band of goblins walked in the door, or a spitting cobra who is looking for a meal happens upon you, that sort of thing. And the reason why wandering monsters worked really well, and still work well in OSR, is the fact that wandering monsters not necessarily could kill a party. They definitely could. They could get lucky and take a party out. But the thing is, they used up valuable resources, and they also basically gave you nothing. OSR rules give you very little XP when it comes to monsters killed. There's no such thing as campaign XP. Like, I mean, you can give it out if you want, but there's no real rules for that. The vast majority of experience points comes from collecting treasure. If you kill the Knoll chieftain and his bodyguards, and he has he and his Knoll bodyguards are probably worth a total of 500 experience points divvied up amongst 4 adventurers, which isn't a lot, especially when you're talking about thousands of experience points to get next level. However, his golden crown that he wears that is worth 3,000 gold, and his in his chest filled with another 2,000 gold is going to give you 5,000 XP divvied up amongst those 4 players. And that's where you're getting your experience points. However, wandering monsters don't bring their treasure with them. They leave them back in their lair, wherever that may be. And all they're doing is showing up and, trying to kill you, and possibly doing so, and, giving you little or nothing for doing so. Yeah, rolling the dice and everything is kind of fun and whatever, but you're more worried about trying to make sure you can get to a room where you can spike the doors closed, and then you can rest so you can get over the fact that you just had that wandering monster encounter, and then you can move on. Most DMs, in my opinion, eventually got to the point where they used the wandering monsters as more of a prod than as a random, right? It was like one of those things where it's like, if you're making a bunch of noise, because you're trying to bash down a steel door, with a giant stone hammer that you have, you deserve to have a couple of ogres come and check out what's going on and teach you that, that's not a good idea to be doing that. If you're going into one room, using up all your spells, and then resting each and every time, and it's taking you forever to get through each and every spot of the dungeon, somebody's going to notice that there's a bunch of blood in the last 2 rooms, and here's a room that the doors are locked. Let's go ahead and get all the hobgoblins together and wait outside this room because somebody's in there, and we'll kill them when they come out. It's one of those things where this goes back to the verisimilitude, is that, and this is one of the problems with mega dungeons, is that it is difficult to just progress through a dungeon with the way that a lot of people, and I'm not going to say most, a lot of people actually play D&D, which is 1 or 2 encounters, rest. 1 or 2 encounters, rest. 1 or 2 encounters, rest. Most dungeons have an ecology. Most dungeons have a group of people living there. It doesn't matter if the first level is goblins, the second level is orcs, the third level is the Hydra. There are things that are smart enough to realize that there's less of them showing up for lunch that day and something's going on, and they're going to start looking for whoever's there. So if you're only going 1 or 2 rooms and then you're resting, 1 or 2 rooms and you're resting over and over again, they're going to know what's going on. They're going to come track you down. Also, if you're going 1 or 2 rooms and then you're heading back to town, that's even worse, because people are going to be like, somebody's coming in here and killing people. Double the guards, triple the guards, quadruple the guards, set up the traps. Get this going. Make sure that they don't come in and just come in and kill, like, you know, Steve and Bob and Frank now. You know, that's one of those things where we want to be able to do it. And as DMs, we want to be able to do that. But here we have a story that we want to tell. We want them to get to the bottom level of the dungeon so they can get the lost amulet of T'Challa or whatever it is that you want to do. And you can get a situation where you have like the progression of the story that you want to tell. Well, if they're just coming in, going through two rooms, and then they're heading out and they're coming back. Well, if you don't repopulate those rooms or set up some sort of trap or lock the doors or do something to show that the dungeon is learning, the people in the dungeon are learning that you're doing this, then you have an issue, right? You have an issue where the players are going to start not feeling like they're playing a role-playing game. They're going to start feeling like they're playing a video game. I mean, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like video games, like the rooms stay empty. I mean, unless like you're playing like an Elden Ring game or something like that, which I appreciate that about Elden Ring. But you know, the rooms stay empty. It's like, oh, I already cleared out this level. Head back, you know, and like, and so we'll just hit the fast forward button to get to the second level. No, you things come back in there, and that, in my opinion, is a total pain in the tuchus as a DM to like, now I got to repopulate all these rooms. Now I got to have you run into all these encounters again, and all of a sudden, wow, we wasted another session again just getting to the point where you got to the stairs to the second level. And as the DM, you are tired and you don't want to have to go through it. The players are tired. They're not having fun. You're not having any fun. Then you just finally just scrap it and you say, screw it, whatever. We're going to do it. But then in the back of your head, you're like, this could have been so much better if the players had just, you know, and that's a thing where you have to kind of train your players too. And like, and also it's a good session 0 conversation where it's like, explain to them, like, you know, this is going to be a living, breathing world. You can't just, you know, show up in the village, murder a couple of people and come back a month later and they're not going to recognize you and come after you with the pitchforks, rope and torches, right? You know, you have to like, make sure that they understand that things have repercussions, and including in dungeons and what have you. Now that doesn't mean that mega dungeons are all bad. It's just that you have to approach them in a certain way. I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't own a ton. I own dozens of mega dungeons. I collect them. I think they're fun. I think they're fun to read. I like to. I mean, there's one out there right now that I'm trying to convince myself it's worth spending the $250 or $300 on drive-through for the Tunnels of Arden Vol or whatever. It's like 5 books. It's just absolutely insane as far as the size of it. You know, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'll buy it eventually. It's just one of the, I just have to convince myself that it's worth it to have that. Maybe after I redo the basement, which has been an ongoing idea that I've had for years now, which might happen this summer. Might. But, you know, and that'll be like my gift to me that, you know, I've got my bookcases set up that I have, and I got all my, you know, like my RPG books set aside. But they're fun to read, but I don't see people running them. I don't see. I mean, even the one that I probably run the most, and that would be this one here, is Rapanathak, which I think is probably, if it isn't the best mega dungeon, it's in my rolling 3, right, of the best ones ever. You know, and you can see, like, here's my little post-it notes that I've placed in the thing from like different areas the players are at, where we played this over and over again. And I just find this one super enjoyable. But I don't run it as a giant mega dungeon. I run the different levels for different things. And that's something you can do with mega dungeons. You can take, this level 3, this profane temple to this evil death god. That's a really cool level of the dungeon. With some slight modifications and some slight changes, we can totally take this and I can make this into a 1-level dungeon that I can put my players with. This could be in the sewers of my city that they're in. You know, there's this secret temple below the city. I could put this in that lost valley that they just discovered. You know, I could put this, you know, at the top level of the, you know, Mount can't climb it or whatever, you know, whatever, right? And you can use it, and that's what I think most people should be using mega dungeons for, is not a kind of repetitive, okay, we're going to go in here, we're going to fight a bunch of stuff, then we're going to leave, and then we're going to come back and fight a bunch of stuff, and we're going to leave. Break it down into chunks, and use it how you will. And I think mega dungeons really shine for that, and they really shine for giving you ideas. And now, this is, I said I was going to take this down. This is, I'll be honest, as I've gotten older, as I'm trying to remember how to fold this, there we go. As I've gotten older, I like I said, most of my DMing is on the fly. I start with a basic idea, maybe a basic map, and then as the game progresses, there's a lot of moments when I'm playing where I ask myself, wouldn't it be cool if, and then I make the situation like that. And I decide that would be cool if that happened. And like I said, my players are, you know, decades of playing with them, they're none the wiser. Who knows if they, you know, and they're going to watch this and they're going to like, ooh, no, they probably won't. But I want more stuff like this. Trilemma Adventures. I did a video on this a long time ago. I think this was in my like top 5 RPG things of the year or whatever when this came out. Trilemma Adventures was a Kickstarter book that I backed, and they said they were going to do another one, and they haven't done one. Not that I know of. If I missed it, I would be pretty pissed. But these are the things I think that are really good. Trilemma Adventures are, and there's lots of books that are like this, but they have basically a 2-page dungeon where it gives you a pretty basic map that, you know, it isn't like a classic, you know, overhead, this is your door and everything like that. It kind of leaves it up to you. It tells you what's going on. It is basically system neutral. It, you know, when it says something where it's, like here, it's like the weapon rack. A large weapon rack stands mostly empty except for 3 wicked-looking man-catchers and a giant hunter's lance, a magnificent long spear tipped with a shard of dark glass. Anyone pierced by it cannot move from the spot or pull out the spear themselves. So here's the spear. What are the stats on it? What does it do? What does it do? It doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you any of those things. It's completely system neutral. If you're playing Labyrinth Lord, you can apply whatever stats you. If you're playing 5e, you can apply whatever stats you can. You're playing Black Hack. You're playing Morkborg. You can use that however you want. And this is one of the most fantastic books of these kind, where it's just there's the 1-page dungeon books that are also really good for this purpose. And the thing here's another one, like the Clutch of Shadows. Here's the map over here, and here's a bunch of stuff over here. And the cool stuff over here, it's like it says there's like carvings and stuff like that, where it says what's that carving about you. There's a little a table that you roll on. This week's other visitors, where, like, you know, the other visitors to the Clutch of Shadows, and you can roll on that. And here you have D3 nobles or diplomats, armed retinue of 2d12, bringing money and exercising treaty rights to inspect the defenses. Isolated encounters, you know, here D3 thieves working and carrying or dragging heavy items lifted from the stores. What's behind that panel? A nest of D6 isopods filled with white larvae. A tiny room home to a fugitive. You know, things like that, where there's all kinds of cool stuff that give you ideas, and that these can be slotted in. And I like these. I like stuff like this way more than stuff. Well, I mean, I like this, but to be honest, I like that way more than I like either of these. Why? Because these are dungeons that I can just, if I don't have a really, really good idea for what I'm going to do for that particular game session, those are the stuff I want to grab. And books like this seem to be few and far between. Everybody wants to make a mega dungeon, and I get it. I get why. I mean, the idea of a giant, like, huge giant labyrinth with 150 rooms and traps and puzzles and treasure and whatever. Yeah, that sounds cool. But it's just, in practice, they just aren't a lot of fun. I mean, I mean, and I do think, and this is more of a commentary on the cult of like whatever the world we live in now. We live in a world where we're watching 3-minute YouTube videos, and we live in a world where, you know, or TikToks or what have you. We live in a world where we're getting bite-sizes pieces of information. Going back into the same dungeon over and over again, trying to get from room to room and fighting the same group of hobgoblins over and over again is boring. And it isn't as interesting as if you can just give somebody a dungeon that they can get through in one 4-hour session. And next week they can have a new dungeon they can go through a nice 4-hour session. That's going to get more people having fun at your table. You're going to have more fun as a DM running that, because fresh new ideas, fresh cool things, and you can still, you know, have an overarching plot, just in a different spot and a different thing that you've been doing. But anyway, there you go. If you have any cool mega dungeons that you have, I probably own it. I mean, but I would love to hear any cool mega dungeons that you think that are awesome and that you run to completion. I'd love to hear that. If you run a mega dungeon to completion. I mean, I'm trying to remember the last ones I did. I mean, Tomb of Abasthor is one that I ran to completion many, many years ago. Oh man, I can't remember. There's another one by Necromancer Games, and I can't remember the name of it either. But I ran that one, and I don't think I did run that one to completion. I've never run Rapanathek to completion. You know, there's tons of them out there, right? And tons of really cool ones out there, but I don't think anybody ever completes them, right? I mean, it just doesn't. But if you've ever ran one that you really like, great. If you ran one to completion, I'd love to hear about that. Maybe there's like some weird, cool secret ones that I haven't heard of, and you can tell me about those. If you know of any cool books like this, like Trilemma, by all means, I'd love to hear about those as well. I always have money to spend on stuff. But again, let me know what you think. Thank you very much for tuning in. This one, like I said, was long and rambling and all over the place, but I hope you've enjoyed the stories. Hope you've enjoyed the time, and hopefully I'll start getting one of these out every. I'm not gonna say every week, but I'm gonna try to get one of these out, you know, every week or two, and just kind of talk about my gaming past and what I think about D&D and RPGs and what have you. All right. Take care of yourself. Be the best version of you possibly can be. That's all we can ask of our fellow humans, right? So just do that. Just try to do the best you can every single day of your life, and that's really, and don't be so hard on yourself if you don't, you know, because hey, everyone makes mistakes, and tomorrow's another day. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.